strategy is we'll do a full deck underneath, so the contractor can get up there and do his work underneath the deck without impacting traffic and have all the deck space that he needs. To abate and prep steel truss above the deck, we're going to need to put a tent over the structure. So what we want to do is put a concrete barrier down the center of the bridge so cars can't accidentally drive into the containment. There'll be a hard barrier there. And then we'll tent one half of the bridge. And we'll only do that when we're abating this, which will be a shot blast abrasion, prepping it and painting it. That's probably a 2 to 3 week process, probably about a 3-week process per half of the bridge. Then all the work that happens underneath, which is more substantial, up above, we're really only looking at blasting and painting. There isn't any steel repair that really needs to be done to increase the load carrying capacity. There's a little bit of corrosion, but not bad. We'll blast that away and we'll preserve the truss. That way we're minimizing how much work, the duration of the work that's happening on top of the deck. I think we'll be able to specify the contractor has to complete that in a 6-week window. 3 weeks either side. Underneath will take longer, but it won't affect traffic. So that's the majority of the extent of traffic impacts that we're going to have on the bridge.
It'll also have a stop-go light. It'll be tied into the state.
That's right. So what we'll do, that containment system will be set up here on the truss. We'll put a stop bar down here on the side of the bridge. It'll be tied to the system up here. It's going to add one cycle to the signal. It's going to reduce efficiency at the 5:30 rush hour. Folks heading east-west on 18 business route are probably going to see about a 5-minute delay if traffic stays on 18. Most likely, local folks are going to find back routes to get around it, is the expectation. So we're probably looking at real delays of a couple of minutes. Yes, sir.
I think one of the biggest problems you're going to have with the traffic on the bridge is when a semi comes up there and tries to get onto that bridge, can't.
Yeah,
well,
we need to eliminate that.
Yeah.
That's why.
Because they do make a turn onto that bridge.
Yes. The containment only needs to be here, so we'll taper out those hard barriers to try to give. If a truck's coming this way, we'll try to give as much turning radius as you can get. And that's the reason why we put the stop bar back here instead of here, so we wouldn't have any vehicles queuing up right there and creating a problem.
According to that design, it ain't gonna work.
Okay.
Not that design, you may have a better one, but that one,
They won't make that.
that ain't happening.
Okay.
They won't
Not
make
even
that
close.
work. But they need
Like I said,
every
we-
inch of that bridge to make
Yeah.
that turn.
Thank you. We'll double check that.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can come up with that.
Actually, the best would be if you could reroute them out through Willamina, which they're not gonna like either, but the reason they make that turn on that bridge is because the only way for them to go westbound on 18.
Well, they don't. The best way is intervene at the mills.
Right.
Signs won't do as much good as going to the mills and saying, if you're going that way, turn right coming out of here, do not go east.
Yeah.
And that'll cure most of your problem. ODOT's always been, I think, remiss in the fact that they ought to put the proper signs out there, and that would eliminate most of our truck problem.
Yeah.
We'll add that to our public outreach.
'Cause, yeah, they won't, one of them semis comes up there, he won't make it through that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and we can run some turning models to see just how close we can get. If we can get something to work there, obviously we want to, because a semi eventually is going to, no matter what kind of signage and warning we put out there. We could actually blunt in that right there because speeds are so low.
Yeah.
And that would give a truck as much room as possible. So, okay, we'll definitely look at that.
The riprap underneath, are we gonna do something to stop stuff from getting wedged, trees coming downstream? Or are we just gonna throw cement in there and hope for the best?
Well, it's likely to be large stone riprap. We'll probably scarify off about 3 feet, get close to the bottom of the footings, lay down the heavy stone mat, and then cover it back up with the native material so you can't see it. That's probably going to provide the best economical measure to control that scour. But yeah, debris coming down river, that's a problem.
What, curiosity?
Apart from vendors, which would create a lot of permitting issues and SHPO issues, I don't know, we haven't thought about that.
What's the, you know, I mean, I assume on the work and all that, there's a guarantee, and when you're talking about a riprap and put in a native material, how long is that native material guaranteed to be there? I mean, is that something, if it's gone, you gotta go back and do it, or is it kind of a deal to where, oops, it didn't stay, and?
No, we've got the material there to do something with, and so it's kind of a, it's an easy
Disposal
fix.
site.
Yes, we can use some expedited permitting processes if we agree to do that, and the material's laying there, so it's easily done. It's not something that has to be maintained. That material could wash away and expose the riprap, and nobody's going to come back and care. It's just one of the permitting games that you play to get a project done quickly.
The grade on the sidewalks has always been a real problem on that when it's icy or slippery. The worst ones on the southeast side, and we've got some ideas. Talk to the county a little bit about the future of that. But that aside, is there any way to improve the grades on those because it's such a short run-out distance to make those a little safer? Right.
Well, I'll tell you the textbook answer. The textbook answer is the funds cover from that bridge joint to that bridge joint.
Right.
But it's up to the county. I think we've talked about doing some of that work because this curve down here is breaking down, and that's not an ADA compliant ramp, right? We know that the asphalt's settling. There's actually some material that's trickling out from underneath the abutment down below. We'll fix that with the riprap. So there's some pavement repair to be done at the end of the bridge. Technically, all that comes out of the county's pocket, so there's no reimbursement for those.
And that's actually a good point too. We led you to believe federal funding and state funding and whatnot, but our obligation to this project is 10 7/8 or 10 3/4% of the overall cost of the project. So the county is faced with a large bill at the end of this project.
So I think we need to identify those and then see what can be fit inside the budget.
I threw out this photograph, and we're talking about the south side as it comes off and goes into the parking lot. Can we straighten that sidewalk out a little bit? Get the design done and the contracting as part of that, sharing cost or however we're going to do it. Even though it's a county street, we're willing to help you on your county street.
Generous of you, Frank.
But that is something to be. The best time to change it is when you do your overall design, rather than patch it in later.
And as we talked today, I think that's something that we should go forward and we'll get some right-of-way issues solved and come back and address those.
Yeah, but that's what the mayor was talking about, the incline there, and really that part of the sidewalk is used most than anything else. So. But we have some storm drainage issues there and storm drain pipes under there, and I'm not sure we know until the surveyors are done where that right of way really is. So I know your surveyors were out there again today. So
I can assure you it's not going to be the same as it is. I mean, just the improvements have to make it a lesser slope, if you will, to accommodate the disadvantage.
Yeah, run it out a little further.
Correct.
Straight.
At the very least, we're going to do something of that nature.
The skateboarders have a hard time making that turn.
Correct.
Degree of difficulty points.
Various times of the year, Santa Claus ends up with his reindeers on top of the bridge and all that. We don't want to chip the paint, so we need some sort of guidelines on what we can and can't do and how we do it. Because to spend all this money and then have Rudolph chip the paint, start corrosion.
No, we actually have talked about that as far as, I think Frank, you and I had a discussion as far as what you wanted to be able to mount up there to make the brackets, if you will, to be able to accommodate that without having any, screws or nails or whatever you're going to do to put it up there. The other issue that Frank and I have had discussions on is the illumination of the bridge. And I think that's up to you folks to see what you really want to do with it.
When we do new street lighting, PG comes in and says there are standards for lightage and all that junk that they do. Is that the standards we use for this bridge? What the current,
Well,
illuminate
yes,
lots?
that's the standard we should use. Unfortunately, the existing light pole locations aren't optimum. So we're gonna do the best we can with those poles.
Can we put anything, we always think LED, something simple up top so that kind of comes down on the bridge so you can see it without being very expensive?
Yes, in fact, there's a lot of different alternatives. You can implement a side broadcast light, so in a line or in a half circle or any number of shapes, so you can get some light out away from those fixtures. I think for a standard design nowadays, the poles would be more closely spaced than they are. So we'll look at ways of stretching that light out and casting it down onto the bridge. And one of the nice things about that is, if you're illuminating the deck, it's a really nice backlight effect when you're viewing the bridge at night. So it has a.
And we're gonna put things in the river for a display like in Las Vegas? No? Okay, I'm just
I think
dreaming.
you've gone overboard.
But yeah, but the lighting could be on the bridge and soft, down somehow, that easy to repair and replace, so.
I mean, we could go up above in that superstructure above with, essentially hidden lighting that can shoot down on the sidewalk or on the bridge itself to where you don't see a lighting structure per se.
Right.
And that's evolved quite radically in the last couple of
Is there a
years with
light?
LED stuff.
There's a light fixture that's mounted to the truss, mid-span of the truss, I think, right there. That
There is.
There is?
well, maybe it's a different bridge.
Do the original plans show lighting?
Pardon me?
Do the original plans reflect lighting?
They show five.
Just those
5
5
posts.
poles that are there.
No close-up details. They just show their locations on the plan and the silhouette on the large-scale drawing. So it's there.
Yeah, it was probably just to illuminate for pedestrians in those days.
That's right.
Now, there was a mention in the proposal about replacing rivets with bolts. Is that going to, all rivets are coming out, or just some of the rivets are coming out, or what?
Sometimes rivets will get loose and back out, and if we find any of those, we'll replace those with a high-strength bolt that has a head on both sides that simulates the shape of a rivet. We completed half of our inspection. We'll be back to complete the inspection in a couple of weeks. And so far in our first inspection, we didn't find any loose rivets. That was something that was scoped. The company that came in and scoped the bridge repair jotted that down. And I think that's kind of something that you typically say on a vintage truss type of bridge. Check the rivet heads. Usually it's a problem if the rivet heads are corroded away and they've lost some of the material. So far, we haven't found any of those problems, but we might down here where there's a little more corrosion in the bottom cord. So we will replace them as we find them.
Well, the reason I was asking back to Santa Claus, is there a way of putting brackets up there, either welded or part of the bolting system, that the city would have to fork the money up for the brackets, but therefore we're not putting clamps on and off, which every time you put a clamp on and off, again, you might chip the paint. Especially in the winter time, if you put the clamp on when it's warm and then it contracts, gets loose, the guy tightens up more. It's easier to replace a clamp that's already up there than it is to come in, repaint, or replace a.
Oh, I agree with
bolt.
you. If you have a standard that wouldn't need to clamp him up there or whatever you put up there, we should find that out, and then Brian's team can have that fabbed or made up and mounted onto that structure. So you're exactly right. So it isn't an eyesight when it's not Christmas.
Right.
Something easy.
But we're not screwing with the actual paint for the structure.
Right, I agree.
That'd be the same thing with banners. You
Yeah.
routinely put banners up, especially on the south side, because you get a lot of exposure. But they're put up there in such a jerry fashion, and half the time they don't hang right. Or that would be a very, I think, a smart thing to have some hoops or loops so that you can put your nail or rope or something through.
We can always drill holes and let it.
Yeah.
With your bridge, you can just about do anything.
Yeah. That was the other thing, historical registration, pros and cons on doing that. Are there?
I was actually going to address that with Old Beck too, the pros and cons, and be honest with you, I'm not sure of what the advantage would be.
There's no advantage. But when we do the Section 106 documentation for the State Historic Preservation Officer, that's one of the fundamental items. They want a determination of eligibility. So it's something we do and we submit to them. So they have a gauge on where this structure ranks on the historical scale. And obviously it's pretty high, especially since it has retained almost all its original characters.
So would that open up a funding stream either at the state or federal level, being a historical?
Not that I know of.
Not, I don't think that we're aware of, but as I said, it was kind of a help to us when we were trying to compete for this last round of funding, was to be able to say that, you know, it was a historic bridge, so.
Or foundation grants, things of that nature?
We haven't looked into that, it's a thought, yeah.
Yeah, I think we should.
One question that's been around for a long time is the old derelict building that's what we call the old Masonic building. It's on the southwest side. I mean, we've all been down there, looked at it, looked at the structure, seen it erode and deteriorate over the years. It strikes me as looking at one of the main pillars on the bridge that if that building did go down, that it could damage one of those. I mean, wouldn't necessarily take it out. I don't know that it has that mass, but we've seen some pretty big things hit that bridge. But if it hit that one pier and cracked it or broke it or did something to it, and it seems to me that we ought to have some kind of conversation to say that's a derelict, in my opinion, derelict dead building, and it threatens millions of dollars being invested in this bridge. And you know, we've had an engineer, a building owner's engineer, say, oh, it's been fixed and it's fine. Well, I'm not an engineer, but my eyes tell me that I don't believe it, and I suspect you've been under there and kind of looked around, and by looking in your face, you have questions, let's put it that way.
I imagine that thing's been hit by a number of trees over the years,
Oh,
from
big
floods,
time.
and
I've seen
I'm amazed it's still standing.
Limbs 30 feet in the air.
He's amazed.
When
it's
we
still
had
standing.
floods and they hit
You
that
can say
3
that.
blocks away, and it sounded like a bomb going off when it hit from 3 blocks away. See the mass, get like a ship,
Yeah.
you know, 30, 40 feet in the air. And just like, oh, there goes the bridge, I'm thinking, you know, boom.
Yeah.
Well,
We're not talking about knocking the bridge out, but if something hit it, to crack it. I mean, if you had that mass on that one pillar, if you go down there and look, it's standalone right there on that side of the bridge. That's my question. It's nothing's going to knock the bridge down, I don't think.
One of our problems, our engineering firm is not a structural firm. And they like to talk about sewers, but they don't really do structural work. We've never contracted for one. This may be the time to ask a firm who knows the area, under our guide, contract of what is the status of that building. Don't know if the county's interested in that. I think they have enough insurance to cover any damage, but, oh, sorry. We're in the same insurance pool, so it's gonna cost us too. But, and we don't have any, I'll call it scientific proof of anything. We just have a gut feeling that there's something wrong.
right.
And you know, I don't know if that's something you can do legally, if we have a separate contract, or whether the county even wants to look at that.
Absolutely. And even if I mean, you weren't to approach OBEC to do the work, I would say you want a bridge type of engineering firm because it's the hydraulic load, and most structural engineers won't understand hydraulic loading on the structure. That's what will bring it down. In fact, the tree hitting it isn't nearly as bad as a log comes up and rests against them and starts collecting debris and creates a log jam, and that water pressure,
Oh, yeah.
that will take the building out.
We've had to clean some of that stuff out of there in past years, and it's building up again down there now.
I got a question. In the last 15 years, I'm sure you guys, if you're doing bridge stuff, research flooding and high waters and stuff. In the last 15 years, we've had 3 or 4 major high water times. And, you know, several times where you can, you know, there's like 2 or 3 steps left over here at the park, and maybe 5 to 8 feet before you hit the water below the bridge. If you guys got that and you're starting in the spring, even if the water doesn't come up, you get a lot of trees, that's when all of them float down. Just something to be aware of if you're like, you know, 8 feet below with your deck. If those logs come scooting by, they're gonna do, clean it out.
He's seeing the pictures of the December floods here. It doesn't go down past, but
The reason for bid letting in March is because it won't be until May at the earliest that the contractor actually mobilizes, because this takes a lot of attention and detail, and you know, that containment system is, I mean, I can't stress how important that containment system is to the project. It has to be engineered, has to be shipped and fabricated. A lot of this stuff is, you know, you gotta get scaffolding to build a framework to work around this. There's a lot of pre-engineering, field engineering that goes into making that happen. And it takes time. It takes time to do that.
It'd
So
be bad if
it'll
she
be,
went down.
it'll be early
Yeah.
summer by the time they're out there. But the good thing is, you know, the paint stripping and repair on the up above the deck, like I said, is like 6 weeks.